The Zephyrian Empire had ruled the galaxy for over 3,000 years. Their massive ships, each the size of small moons, cast shadows across entire star systems as they moved from world to world, collecting tribute and expanding their dominion. The Empire's philosophy was simple: superior beings ruled, inferior beings served. For millennia, this had worked perfectly, until they discovered Earth. Captain Vextar stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion, his 6 arms folded behind his crystalline back as he gazed at the blue-green world spinning slowly before them. The planet was beautiful, he had to admit, but beauty meant nothing when it came to conquest. What mattered was the intelligence reports his scouts had gathered over the past solar cycle. These humans, he said, tasting the alien word with distaste, they show promise as a servitor species. Their physical capabilities are adequate, their numbers substantial, and, most importantly, they appear to lack any significant spacefaring technology. His subordinate, Commander Yilnash, consulted her holographic display. The scouts report that their most advanced vessels barely reach their own planetary moon. They still use primitive chemical propulsion and have not even achieved faster-than-light travel. They should pose no threat to our collection operations. Vextar's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his kind. Excellent. Deploy the standard subjugation protocol. Drop fear-inducing demonstrations on their major population centers, followed by ultimatum broadcasts. Once they understand their position, we'll begin harvesting the strongest specimens for labor assignments across the Empire. The Zephyrian approach had been refined over thousands of conquered worlds. First came the show of force, a few cities reduced to ash by orbital bombardment, just enough to demonstrate the futility of resistance. Then came the demands: surrender unconditionally, accept imperial rule, and provide a yearly tribute of their strongest citizens for off-world labor. It had never failed. The first human city to burn was Tokyo. The beam lance from the Eternal Dominion carved through the metropolitan area in seconds, leaving behind a perfectly circular crater of melted glass and stone. 12 million humans died in that instant, their final moments recorded by the Empire's surveillance drones for later broadcast to the rest of the planet. Within hours, similar demonstrations occurred above London, New York, Moscow, and Beijing. The message was clear: resistance was futile, compliance was the only option for survival. But the humans didn't respond as expected. Dr. Sarah Chun watched the feeds from the International Space Station, her hands shaking as she documented humanity's first contact with an alien intelligence. It wasn't the peaceful, enlightening exchange that scientists had dreamed about for centuries. It was genocide. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our physics textbooks, she reported to the emergency council session being held in the ISS's communication bay. World leaders, military commanders, and scientists from every major nation had gathered via quantum-encrypted channels to coordinate humanity's response. General Harrison's weathered face filled one of the screens. "Doctor, we need to know if we have any chance of fighting back. These ships, they're massive. Our best estimates put the largest one at over 50 kilometers long." "Their technology is clearly superior," Sarah replied, pulling up her analysis. "But there's something odd about their attack patterns. They're using directed energy weapons, yes, but the targeting systems seem inefficient, almost wasteful. It's as if they're not trying to win a war, they're trying to send a message." President Martinez leaned forward on another screen. "What kind of message?" "Submission," Admiral Petrov answered grimly. "This is a show of force, not total warfare. They want us alive for something." The alien ultimatum arrived 6 hours later, broadcast simultaneously on every frequency across the electromagnetic spectrum. The translation was crude but clear: surrender or face extinction. Provide 10 million of your strongest citizens annually for off-world service. Accept imperial oversight of your planetary government. Resistance will result in total annihilation. The world's leaders had 72 hours to respond. In those 3 days, humanity revealed something that the Zephyrian Empire had never encountered in their 3 millennia of conquest. Where other species had crumbled in fear, humans began to organize. Where others had accepted defeat, humans started planning. The response came not from any government, but From a 14-year-old girl in Mumbai whose message went viral across every human communication network in a matter of hours. They think we're weak because we haven't left our solar system yet, Priya Sharma said in her broadcast from the ruins of what had once been her school. They think we'll just hand over our friends and families to save ourselves. But they don't understand something about humans. We're not strong because we have the best technology. We're strong because we don't give up. Ever. Her words became a rallying cry that spread across the planet faster than any government decree could have managed. Within hours, #WeAreHuman was trending on every social platform, shared in hundreds of languages. Videos poured in from every continent. Humans refusing to surrender, humans helping each other rebuild, humans getting back to work despite the smoking craters where their cities used to be. Captain Vextar watched these transmissions with growing confusion. Commander, explain to me why the humans appear to be celebrating? Yilnash studied the data streams with equal bewilderment. I'm not certain, sir. Our cultural analysts suggest this may be some form of pre-surrender ritual. Perhaps they're saying farewell to their old way of life. Then, why are they rebuilding their destroyed infrastructure? Look at this. Vextar gestured to a feed showing thousands of humans working around the clock to clear debris from the London crater. They should be cowering in terror, preparing their tribute lists. Instead, they're making their world stronger. The 72-hour deadline came and went without any official surrender. Instead, humanity's response came in the form of action. Every space-capable nation on Earth began launching everything they had: satellites, probes, even repurposed ICBMs fitted with sensor packages. It wasn't much by Zephyrian standards, but it was something no conquered species had ever attempted. They were trying to gather intelligence on their conquerors. Sir, Yilnash reported with obvious unease. The humans have launched over 400 primitive spacecraft in the past day. Our point defense systems could easily destroy them. But what, Commander? They're not armed. They appear to be purely observational. It's as if they're studying us. Vextar's crystalline features darkened. Studying us? Impossible. They're primitives. Their spacecraft can barely achieve orbital velocity. What could they possibly learn about Imperial technology? The answer came sooner than expected. Dr. Chun had been studying the alien ships for 3 days straight when she made the discovery that would change everything. Working with a team of physicists, engineers, and computer scientists from around the globe, she had been analyzing every piece of data their hastily launched sensor platforms could gather. Look at this, she said during an emergency video conference with military leaders. Her exhaustion was obvious, but her excitement was even stronger. Their ships are incredible, yes, but they're also, how do I put this, they're designed for intimidation, not efficiency. General Harrison frowned. What do you mean? Take their main weapon systems. Those beam lances that destroyed our cities? They're massively overpowered for what they accomplish. It's like using a nuclear bomb to kill a single person. Effective, yes, but wasteful beyond belief. Admiral Petrov leaned forward. Are you saying their technology isn't as advanced as we thought? No, it's definitely advanced. But it's advanced in a very specific way. Everything about their ships screams, look how powerful we are, instead of this is the most effective way to accomplish our goals. Their hulls are covered in decorative elements that serve no functional purpose. Their energy signatures suggest they're running their reactors at about 30% efficiency because the rest of the power is being used for essentially showing off. President Martinez joined the call, looking haggard from 3 days of nonstop crisis management. Doctor, what exactly are you telling us? Sarah took a deep breath. I'm telling you that these aliens have been conquering primitive civilizations for so long that they've forgotten how to fight in actual war. They're used to terrifying Stone Age cultures with overwhelming displays of force. But they've never had to face an opponent who could analyze their technology and potentially adapt to it. And can we? Adapt to it, I mean. That's where it gets interesting. Their ships are huge, their weapons are powerful, but their actual technological base appears to be surprisingly narrow. They've perfected a few key technologies: faster-than-light travel, energy manipulation, artificial gravity. But they've never had to innovate beyond that because no one's ever forced them to. The implications hit everyone on the call at the same time. They're not warriors, General Harrison said slowly. They're bullies. Exactly. And bullies have a weakness that every human child learns on the playground eventually. They don't know how to fight when someone fights back. Over the next week, humanity began implementing what historians would later call the asymmetric response doctrine. Since they couldn't match Zephyrian technology directly, they wouldn't try to. Instead, they would do what humans had always done when faced with a stronger enemy. They would adapt, improvise, and find weaknesses where none seemed to exist. The first test came when the Zephyrians grew impatient with Earth's lack of surrender and decided to take their tribute by force. Landing craft descended on major population centers around the globe, each one carrying automated collection systems designed to identify and capture the strongest human specimens. What they found waiting for them changed the nature of the conflict forever. In New Delhi, the landing craft touched down in what had once been a busy marketplace. The Zephyrian collection drones emerged, expecting to find terrified humans cowering in whatever shelter they could find. Instead, they found empty streets and buildings that had been systematically stripped of anything useful. The humans hadn't fled. They had evacuated strategically, taking everything of value with them and leaving behind carefully prepared surprises. The first drone to enter a seemingly abandoned building triggered a cascade of improvised explosives made from fertilizer, fuel, and scavenged electronics. The blast wasn't powerful enough to seriously damage the drone, but it was loud enough to echo across the city and serve as a signal for what came next. From hidden positions throughout the area, humans began attacking with weapons that seemed primitive by galactic standards, but proved surprisingly effective against enemies who had never faced organized resistance. Molotov cocktails made from stolen alien fuel cells. Improvised projectiles launched from modified construction equipment. Electronic warfare attacks using commercial radio equipment reprogrammed by teenage hackers. The collection drones, designed to process scared civilians, struggled to adapt to coordinated guerrilla tactics. Within hours, 3 of the 5 landing craft had been forced to retreat, their collection quotas unfulfilled. Similar scenes played out across the globe. In Sao Paulo, humans used the city's extensive tunnel system to launch hit-and-run attacks that left Zephyrian forces confused and demoralized. In Berlin, a group of engineering students managed to capture an intact collection drone and began reverse engineering its technology in real time, broadcasting their findings to resistance cells worldwide. But, perhaps most importantly, humans began talking to their would-be conquerors. Captain Vextar was reviewing casualty reports when the first human transmission reached his ship. It came on an open channel, in broken but understandable Zephyrian standard, and it was addressed to him personally. Captain Vextar of the ship Eternal Dominion, the voice said. It belonged to a young human female, though Vextar couldn't tell much more from the audio alone. My name is Dr. Sarah Chun. I'm a physicist from the species you're trying to enslave. I have a question for you. Yilnash looked up from her console. Sir, should I cut the transmission? Vextar raised one of his 6 hands. No. Let's hear what the primitive has to say. My question is this. How many species have you conquered in your empire's history? Vextar found himself answering almost automatically. The empire has brought order to over 12,000 worlds, human. Your point. And how many of those 12,000 species had developed faster than light travel when you conquered them? The question was so unexpected that Vextar had to think for a moment. None, obviously. Species that achieve interstellar travel are invited to join the Empire as clients, not subjects. I see. And how many of those 12,000 species fought back against your initial subjugation attempts? None that mattered, Vextar replied, though he was beginning to feel uneasy about the direction of this conversation. Captain, do you realize that you've never actually conquered a spacefaring civilization? You've spent 3,000 years bullying Stone Age cultures, and now you're trying to use the same tactics on a species that can analyze your technology, adapt to your strategies, and coordinate resistance across an entire planet in real time. Vextar's mandibles clicked in annoyance. Human, your primitive weapons cannot harm Imperial vessels. Your resistance is meaningless. Is it? Let me share some data with you. The transmission shifted to a technical readout that made Yilnash gasp. It was a complete breakdown of Zephyrian shield harmonics, weapon charging cycles, and structural weak points. Information that should have been impossible for the humans to obtain. We've been studying you for 2 weeks now, Captain. Your ships are impressive, but they're also predictable. You rely on overwhelming force because you've never needed to be subtle or efficient. You use the same attack patterns, the same defensive configurations, the same tactical approaches that worked against civilizations that barely understood metallurgy. Impossible, Vextar growled. Our technology is beyond your comprehension. Your technology is advanced, yes, but it's also 3,000 years out of date. You stopped innovating the moment conquest became easy. We, on the other hand, have been innovating nonstop for our entire existence because we've always had to. We've had to compete with each other, survive ice ages, overcome plagues, fight world wars. Every generation of humans has had to be smarter and more adaptable than the last, or they died. The transmission paused, and when Dr. Chin's voice returned, it carried a note of something that Vextar was beginning to recognize: confidence. Captain, you wanted to enslave humanity because you thought we were weak. But you made one critical error in your assessment. You confused technological development with adaptive capability. Yes, we're still learning how to leave our solar system. But we've spent our entire evolutionary history learning how to survive impossible odds. And Captain, the human's voice took on a tone that made Vextar's crystalline spine shiver. We're very, very good at it. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge of the Eternal Dominion in absolute silence. For the first time in his career, Captain Vextar found himself wondering if the Empire had made a mistake. That doubt became certainty over the next several days as human resistance efforts began achieving results that should have been impossible. Collection operations failed not because humans were stronger or better armed, but because they were more clever than any species the Empire had ever faced. In Mumbai, humans used the city's cellular network to create a real-time tracking system that allowed resistance fighters to coordinate attacks on collection drones with precision timing. In Stockholm, a group of teenagers managed to hack into a Zephyrian communication relay and began broadcasting fake orders that sent collection craft to empty locations. Most disturbing of all, humans began to win. Not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through the application of intelligence, creativity, and a willingness to sacrifice that the Empire had never encountered. They turned every disadvantage into an advantage, every weakness into a trap. When Zephyrian forces adapted to human guerrilla tactics, humans adapted faster. When the Empire brought in heavier weapons, humans learned to turn those weapons against their wielders. When Zephyrian commanders tried to predict human behavior, they found themselves consistently outmaneuvered by opponents who seemed to thrive on unpredictability. But, perhaps most unnerving of all, humans began to capture Zephyrian technology and reverse engineer it at a pace that terrified Imperial scientists. Within a month of first contact, human resistance cells were using modified Zephyrian energy cells to power improvised weapons that could actually damage Imperial equipment. Captain Vextar stood on his bridge, watching another failed collection operation unfold on the screens before him. 3 landing craft had been forced to retreat after encountering coordinated human resistance that included, impossibly, modified Zephyrian plasma weapons. Sir, Yilnash reported, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. The humans have managed to reverse engineer our basic energy manipulation technology. They're creating crude but functional versions of our weapons using scavenged components and, I can't believe I'm saying this, civilian electronics. How is that possible? Vextar demanded. We don't know. Our technology is supposed to be incomprehensible to primitive species. But the humans seem to approach it differently than any culture we've encountered. Instead of trying to understand the underlying principles, they simply observe what it does and then find ways to replicate the effects using their own knowledge base. Vextar stared at the tactical display showing Earth. Red markers indicated areas of active human resistance. There were thousands of them, spread across every continent, operating independently but somehow coordinating their efforts on a global scale. Commander, he said slowly, how many Imperial casualties have we taken? In the past month, 17 collection craft destroyed or damaged beyond repair. 4 landing craft lost with all hands. And over 200 collection drones either destroyed or captured for study. And human casualties? Difficult to estimate, sir. They don't fight in traditional formation. But intelligence suggests we've killed fewer than 50,000 humans in direct combat. The numbers were staggering. In a month of conflict, humans had destroyed more Imperial equipment than some entire campaigns had cost, while taking losses that barely registered on their population statistics. Sir, Yilnash said quietly, perhaps we should consider alternative approaches. Vextar's mandibles clicked ominously. You're suggesting retreat? I'm suggesting that the humans may be unsuitable for standard subjugation protocols. Perhaps we should classify them as a client species instead of a subject species. Offer them membership in the Empire rather than attempting conquest. Impossible. The Empire does not negotiate with primitives. But, even as he said it, Vextar wondered if the Empire's definition of primitive might need to be reconsidered. The humans had demonstrated capabilities that seemed to violate everything the Empire thought it knew about technological development and military doctrine. As if summoned by his thoughts, another transmission arrived from Earth. This time, it came from multiple sources simultaneously, hundreds of human voices speaking in unison across dozens of different languages, somehow perfectly synchronized. Captain Vextar, the collective voice said, we've been thinking about your offer. The one where we surrender and become your slaves. And Vextar found himself asking, we have a counterproposal. Despite himself, Vextar felt a chill of anticipation. Speak. Leave. Now, while you still can. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in silence once again. But this time, the silence felt different. It felt like the calm before a storm. Unknown to Captain Vextar, that storm was already gathering. In hidden facilities around the globe, humans were putting the finishing touches on projects that would fundamentally alter the balance of power in their sector of the galaxy. The age of easy conquest was about to end. The message that changed everything came exactly 60 days after the Zephyrian Empire's first assault on Earth. It wasn't transmitted through normal communication channels. Instead, it appeared simultaneously on every Zephyrian ship's bridge as a holographic projection, bypassing their most sophisticated security systems as if they didn't exist. Captain Vextar watched in stunned silence as a three-dimensional image of a human female materialized before his command chair. She appeared to be middle-aged by human standards, with graying hair and eyes that held a combination of intelligence and determination that made his crystalline spine tingle with unease. Greetings, Captain Vextar and the crew of the Eternal Dominion, the human said calmly. My name is Dr. Elizabeth Harper, Director of the newly formed Human Defense Initiative. I'm broadcasting this message to every ship in your invasion fleet because we need to talk. Commander Yilnash frantically worked at her console, trying to trace the signal's source or find a way to cut the transmission. Sir, I can't block it. Whatever technology they're using, it's operating on principles our systems can't recognize. That's because it's not alien technology, Dr. Harper continued, as if she could hear Yilnash's report. It's human technology, based on principles we derived from studying your equipment. We call it quantum-tunneled holographic projection. And, yes, we invented it in the past month. You see, Captain, that's what happens when you try to conquer a species that's been forced to innovate for survival for millions of years. We adapt very, very quickly. Vextar found his voice. Human, this transmission is an act of war against the Zephyrian Empire. You will cease immediately and prepare for, Captain, Dr. Harper interrupted, her tone still polite, but carrying an edge of steel. You declared war on us 60 days ago when you murdered 12 million innocent people. We're simply responding to your aggression with measured force. But that's about to change. The holographic projection shifted, showing technical schematics that made every Zephyrian on the bridge gasp in recognition. They were looking at detailed blueprints of their own ships, down to the smallest component, annotated with human text that analyzed structural weaknesses, power distribution flaws, and tactical vulnerabilities. Over the past 2 months, we've captured and reverse-engineered 47 pieces of Zephyrian technology, Dr. Harper explained. Collection drones, communication arrays, weapon systems, shield generators, even one of your smaller landing craft. Our scientists have been working around the clock to understand not just how your technology works, but, more importantly, how it fails. The schematics zoomed in on specific areas, highlighting critical systems that the Zephyrians had always considered impregnable. Your shield generators, for example, operate on a rotating frequency algorithm that changes every 3.7 seconds. Very clever, and certainly effective against any species that doesn't understand frequency mathematics. Unfortunately for you, humans invented frequency analysis during our Industrial Revolution. Your shields might as well be transparent to us now. Vextar felt something he hadn't experienced in his 3 centuries of military service. Genuine fear. What do you want, human? What we want, Captain, is very simple. We want you to leave our solar system and never return. We want reparations for the 12 million people you murdered during your initial attack. And we want a formal apology from your empire, acknowledging that attempting to enslave humanity was a catastrophic error in judgment. Impossible, Vextar snarled. The Empire does not negotiate with primitives. Dr. Harper's expression didn't change, but somehow her presence became more intimidating. Captain, let me explain something about human nature that your intelligence reports seem to have missed. We have a saying: if you want peace, prepare for war. We've been preparing for war our entire existence. Not just with each other, but with everything. Diseases, natural disasters, resource scarcity, environmental collapse. We've survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, and a dozen near-extinction events. We didn't become the dominant species on our planet because we were the strongest or the fastest. We became dominant because we refused to give up, even when giving up is the logical choice. The holographic projection changed again, this time showing a real-time view of Earth from orbit. But something was wrong with the image. Where there should have been the blue-green marble that Vextar remembered, he now saw something that made his blood run cold. The planet was surrounded by a dense network of orbital installations, weapon platforms, and defensive structures that definitely hadn't been there a week ago. Streams of construction ships moved between the installations like busy insects, adding new components and expanding the network even as he watched. How? Yilnash whispered. Crash construction program. Dr. Harper explained matter-of-factly. Every nation on Earth contributing resources, every human with relevant skills working 20-hour shifts. We built our orbital defense network using a combination of our existing space technology, reverse-engineered Zephyrian components, and some innovations that your empire has never seen before. She paused, letting that sink in. Captain, in 2 months, the human race has advanced from barely achieving lunar orbit to constructing defensive installations that can threaten Imperial capital ships. Imagine what we'll accomplish in 2 years. Or 20. Vextar studied the orbital display with growing alarm. The human defense network wasn't just impressive, it was strategically brilliant. The installations were positioned to create overlapping fields of fire that would make approaching Earth a nightmare for any attacking force. But more disturbing were the design elements he couldn't identify. Technological signatures that didn't match anything in the Imperial database. You're bluffing, he said, though his conviction was wavering. Your primitive weapons cannot threaten Imperial vessels. Would you like a demonstration? Before Vextar could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the Eternal Dominion. Yilnash's hands flew over her console as she tried to process the incoming data. Sir, we're being targeted. Multiple weapon locks from everywhere. The main display lit up with targeting vectors originating from the human orbital network. Hundreds of them, all converging on Zephyrian ships throughout the fleet. But the truly terrifying part wasn't the number of targeting locks, it was their precision. The humans weren't just aiming at the ships, they were targeting specific systems on each vessel. Captain, Dr. Harper's voice cut through the chaos on the bridge. Right now, every ship in your fleet is being painted by targeting systems that can hit a 2-meter target from a range of 50,000 kilometers. We know exactly where your shield generators are located, precisely how long it takes your weapons to charge, and exactly which sections of your hulls are most vulnerable to kinetic penetrators. The targeting display pulsed, and Vextar realized with horror that the humans weren't just threatening his ships, they were demonstrating that they could destroy them any time they chose. Stand down your weapons, he ordered frantically. Our weapons are standing by, Captain. The question is, what are yours doing? Vextar looked at his tactical officer, who who shook his head nervously. All weapon systems are offline, sir. They've been continuously targeted since the demonstration began. If we try to power them up, the humans will interpret that as hostile action. For the first time in Imperial history, a Zephyrian fleet found itself completely at the mercy of what they had classified as a primitive species. Now that we have your attention, Dr. Harper continued, let me tell you about some of the other projects we've been working on. Project Lightbringer, for example. The holographic display shifted to show a massive construction site in Earth's asteroid belt. It was clearly human-built, but the scale was staggering. A structure easily 10 kilometers across, surrounded by mining operations that were stripping entire asteroids for raw materials. Lightbringer is our first interstellar weapons platform, Dr. Harper explained calmly. We based the design on modified Zephyrian faster-than-light technology, but we've made some improvements. Where your ships prioritize intimidation over efficiency, ours prioritize lethality over appearance. Lightbringer can reach any star system within 50 light-years in approximately 6 hours. Its primary weapon system is capable of sterilizing planetary surfaces from a range of 1 astronomical unit. Vextar's mandibles clicked in disbelief. Impossible. You couldn't have developed interstellar capability so quickly. Captain, you keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means. Dr. Harper's expression showed what humans called a smile, though it held no warmth. We didn't develop interstellar capability. We stole it from you, improved it, and then built something better. That's what humans do. We take existing solutions and make them work better, faster, and more efficiently. The display showed technical specifications for the Lightbringer platform that made Yilnash gasp in recognition. The human design incorporated Zephyrian FTL technology, but the implementation was completely different. Where Imperial ships used massive, inefficient drives that required enormous amounts of power, the human design was compact, elegant, and apparently capable of much faster travel than anything in the Imperial fleet. But Lightbringer is just the beginning, Dr. Harper continued. Project Prometheus is our biotechnology initiative. We're working on ways to make humans stronger, faster, and more resilient. Project Atlas is developing portable FTL communication systems that will allow real-time coordination across interstellar distances. And Project Icarus. She paused. Well, let's just say that Icarus is our backup plan, in case diplomacy fails. What kind of backup plan? Vextar asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. The kind that ensures that if humanity falls, we won't fall alone. The implications of that statement hit the bridge like a physical blow. The humans weren't just preparing to defend themselves. They were preparing to take the entire Zephyrian Empire down with them, if necessary. Captain, Dr. Harper said, her tone becoming businesslike again, you have a choice to make. You can continue your futile attempts to conquer humanity, knowing that every day you delay gives us more time to develop new ways to destroy your empire. Or you can cut your losses, withdraw from our solar system, and report back to your superiors that humanity is not a suitable target for subjugation. And if we choose neither option, then you'll discover what happens when a species that has spent its entire evolutionary history learning to kill more efficiently than any other life form decides to apply those skills on an interstellar scale. The holographic projection flickered and changed one final time, showing a view of space near one of the outer planets in the system. A Zephyrian scout ship hung motionless in the void, apparently undamaged but clearly dead. No energy signatures, no movement, no signs of life. The crew of that vessel is still alive, Dr. Harper said quietly. But their ship has been completely disabled by what we call an electromagnetic pulse mine. It's a new technology we developed specifically for dealing with Zephyrian vessels. The mine uses your own shield frequency against you, creating a resonance cascade that overloads every electronic system on your ship simultaneously. She paused, letting the implications sink in. We have approximately 10,000 such devices positioned throughout our solar system, Captain. They're completely undetectable by your sensors until they activate, and each one is capable of disabling ships up to cruiser class. Your dreadnoughts would require multiple hits, but the principle remains the same. Vextar stared at the disabled scout ship, his mind racing. In 2 months, the humans had gone from Stone Age primitives to a legitimate threat to Imperial vessels. What would they be capable of in 2 years? You're threatening the entire Zephyrian Empire, he said slowly. No, Captain. We're offering you a chance to avoid a war that will cost both our civilizations dearly. The Zephyrian Empire has ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years by conquering species that couldn't fight back. But humanity can fight back, and if you force us to, we'll do it better than anyone you've ever encountered. Dr. Harper leaned forward slightly, her expression deadly serious. Captain, your empire has made the same mistake that every bully in human history has made. You've confused fear with respect, submission with loyalty, and overwhelming force with actual strength. But bullies have a critical weakness. They've never learned how to handle an opponent who refuses to be intimidated. The projection began to flicker, indicating that the transmission was ending. You have 72 hours to withdraw from our solar system, Captain. After that, we'll assume you've chosen war over diplomacy, and we'll respond accordingly. The hologram vanished, leaving the bridge of the Eternal Dominion in absolute silence. For several minutes, no one spoke. Then, Yilnash quietly cleared her throat. Sir, what are your orders? Vextar studied the tactical display, where human weapon installations continued to track every ship in his fleet with mechanical precision. The humans had demonstrated capabilities that should have been impossible, technology that defied Imperial understanding, and strategic thinking that outmatched anything he'd encountered in 3 centuries of military service. Commander, he said finally, open a channel to Imperial Command. Priority Alpha. Sir, we need to report to the Empire that we've encountered something unprecedented. A species that, he struggled to find the words, a species that may actually be superior to us. The admission felt like swallowing poison, but Vextar knew it was true. In 2 months, humanity had accomplished what most Imperial species couldn't achieve in 2 centuries. They had taken Zephyrian technology and not only reverse-engineered it, but improved upon it in ways that made Imperial engineers look like children playing with toys. But more than their technological advancement, it was their strategic thinking that truly terrified him. The humans hadn't just built weapons. They'd built an entire defensive philosophy based on asymmetric warfare, technological adaptation, and a willingness to sacrifice that bordered on insanity. Sir, Yilnash said quietly, what if Imperial Command orders us to continue the assault? Vextar looked at the display showing Earth's orbital defenses, then at the disabled scout ship, then at the targeting vectors that still painted every ship in his fleet. Then, Commander, we'll be following orders that lead directly to the destruction of this entire fleet. As if to emphasize his point, proximity alarms began sounding throughout the ship. On the main display, new contacts appeared, human vessels emerging from behind various moons and asteroids where they'd been hidden. They were small by Imperial standards, but they moved with a precision and coordination that spoke of advanced tactical systems and experienced crews. Sir, the tactical officer reported, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. We're being surrounded. 12? No, 20, 37 human vessels have appeared on sensors. They're taking up positions around our fleet. Are they armed? Vextar asked. Unknown, sir. Their energy signatures don't match any known weapon systems. But, given what we've seen of human adaptability, assume they're armed, Vextar ordered. And assume they're targeting critical systems. Another transmission arrived, this time from one of the approaching human vessels. The voice was male, younger than Dr. Harper, but carrying the same undertone of absolute confidence. Zephyrian Fleet, this is Admiral Chun aboard the UES Defiance. You are now surrounded by elements of the Human Defense Force. We're not here to attack you, but we are here to ensure that your withdrawal from our system proceeds smoothly and without incident. And if we refuse to withdraw? Vextar found himself asking. Then, we'll ensure your withdrawal proceeds anyway, Captain. The method is up to you. The human admiral's tone was polite, professional, and utterly implacable. It was the voice of someone who had already won and was offering his opponent a chance to surrender with dignity. Admiral Chun, Vextar said carefully, you understand that you're threatening vessels of the Zephyrian Empire? Such actions traditionally result in the complete annihilation of the offending species. Captain, I think you misunderstand the situation. We're not threatening you. We're informing you of reality. The reality is that humanity is no longer a species that can be bullied into submission. We've had 2 months to study your technology, analyze your tactics, and prepare countermeasures. If you choose to fight, you'll lose. The only question is how many of your people die in the process. There was a pause. Then, Admiral Chen's voice returned, softer but somehow more menacing. Captain, let me share something with you that your intelligence reports probably missed. Humans don't just fight to win. We fight to make sure that anyone who threatens us never wants to fight us again. If you force us into a shooting war, we won't just defeat your fleet. We'll hunt down every Zephyrian military installation in this sector of the galaxy. We'll reverse engineer every piece of technology we capture. And we'll make sure that the entire galaxy knows that the Zephyrian Empire was defeated by a species they tried to enslave. The transmission ended, leaving Captain Vextar alone with a decision that would define not just his career, but potentially the future of the Zephyrian Empire. Around him, his crew waited for orders. Outside, human ships moved into perfect formation, their weapons trained on critical systems throughout the Imperial fleet. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, humanity's first interstellar weapons platform was completing its final preparations for launch. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Zephyrian Empire faced an enemy that was stronger, smarter, and more determined than they were. The age of easy conquest was over. The age of consequences had begun. The Zephyrian High Council had not convened an emergency session in over 800 years. The last time had been when a star went supernova and threatened to destroy 3 core worlds. Today, they gathered to discuss something far more disturbing: the first military defeat in Imperial history. Supreme Chancellor Keth Morin